the former Chile ambassador said every time a Chinese cabinet came to Chile, they talk about trade cooperation. But every time U.S. cabinet came to Chile, it's about China. Every time the Western leaders came here, we get free lectures. So I just wonder how many Western politicians, think from global South leaders' position.
Welcome back to the show. This is the second part of the interview with Jing Jing Lee. So Jing Jing, we look at the Belt and Road Initiative, which you've mentioned a little bit. We've had our fair share of conversations about the Belt and Road Initiative with experts like Hussein Askari and Stephen Brower from the BRICS Institute in Sweden, of all places. Yes, including the infamous debt trap lie. But today, let's steer clear of the cliches and dig into what's really happening with the BRI in Latin America. You recently attended the G20 in Brazil, where there were rumors about Brazil stepping back from its BRI commitments. Given Brazil's upcoming chairmanship in 2025, how do you see this affecting the BRI's trajectory in the region?
I think I read several medias believe like Brazil not joining BRI, maybe they are criticizing Brazil, but I think I'm not worrying about it at all. Even though Brazil is not joining the BRI yet, but it does not jeopardize the friendly relationship between China and Brazil. So during the G20, I don't know whether our followers, our viewers have watched it. So China and Brazil elevate ties during the G20. So I think let me find the term, because during the G20, when President Xi Jinping met with the Brazilian President Lula, they announced an alleviation of the bilateral ties to a community with a shared future for a more just world and a more sustainable planet. So despite all that concerns, China and Brazil's relationship got upgraded to an even more deeper level. And Brazil is the first country in Latin America that has a strategic partnership with China. So that doesn't change the friendship, the strategic relations between the two countries. And China and Brazil have a lot same goals in reducing poverty, in making this planet much more sustainable. So we're on the same page. And when I was in Brazil, I've interviewed and talked to many local people from different ethnic groups. We had such a fun time. So there's a genuine connection between China and Brazil. And the Brazilian communities in China is growing too. I'm so glad I'm seeing so many people from Brazil and from the whole Latin America are moving to China recently in different cities. So the friendship is really getting closer and closer. It doesn't jeopardize the relationship. And but some may worry, but what about Brazil's role? But I think you have to look at from Brazil's perspective, because as the largest country in South America, in Latin America, Brazil has their own goals, has their own concerns. So and also considering its relationship with the United States and its position in CELAC. So if they have different thoughts, I think it's understandable. The thing is, China is not forcing any country to join or not join the BRI. So Brazil is not joining, but does not jeopardize our cooperation, our friendship. Unlike some countries, if you don't listen to their goals, you listen to their rules, they're like, oh, we're going to sanction you, we're going to overthrow your leaders, we're going to stage a coup. No, it's not happening, right? If you have a different thought, okay, so we give you a time to think about it. You're a sovereign country, you have your own minds, and sure. But how about we have a third option? We have a third way to cooperate. So I think it's totally understandable. And also, it's just you need to think from Brazilian's perspective. Inside, they have different political parties. They probably have divided opinions, and probably they need time to think about what kind of economic cooperation we want to have with China if we join with BRI. So probably within the government, within Brazil itself, they haven't decided. They haven't found the best way to cooperate with China yet. So let them think, no pressure. So I don't worry about BRICS. I don't worry about China-Brazil relationship because I see a lot of things are going on, either economic cooperation, agricultural cooperation, and also China-Brazil set 2026 as the cultural exchange year, like China-Brazil cultural exchange year, to enhance the cultural exchanges and people exchanges. So I mean, so despite not joining BRI, in other areas there are way more cooperations. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still confident about BRICS.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You actually bring up a sort of a very important point there, that because China has a different, which you were just mentioning the last episode of, it was a very long 40, 50 year development cycle that actually bring out 850 million plus people out of poverty in China. Whereas, we're sort of generally told it was about 10, 15 years, but actually it wasn't. But that was part of a unique political system, a meritocracy. But Brazil has a different political system. And so they have to, in this cooperation, they have to somehow manage that administratively.
Yeah,
So that makes sense. Because I was actually going to bring
yeah,
up about Argentina, where they have a new president who didn't want to join BRICS. And not to bring this up so much, because I do want to talk about Brazil, but he sort of went back and forth. And then I think the latest advice is that he is talking to China and trying to have a good
yeah.
relationship. So, it's, who knows?
It's interesting. So before the election, when he was running for the campaign, he said a lot of crazy stuff about China and the Communist Party. So like, we don't work with the Communist Party, like blah blah blah. A lot of crazy stuff. But once he took in office, and maybe he realized, oh, we do so much businesses with China, and with no conditions, like China is buying our stuff with no conditions. So let's keep doing this. Let's continue this. And he's friendly with China now. So like he really softened his tones with China.
Mm,
So I mean, I can understand why a lot of politicians, when they try to get elected, they say a lot of tough stuff. But once they took office and see the reality, they realize they cannot cut ties with China. But it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter to the Chinese leaders, because whether you want to work or not work with us, it's your decision. You figure it out. We will not force you. We will not like sanction you. We will not overthrow your government. No, change your leader and change your leader that we chose. Otherwise, we don't work with you. That's not China's foreign policy. And I guess that's why a lot of countries love working with China, just because of they don't give you lectures. That reminds me of a journalist from Nigeria that I talked to a few months ago, because he was here for the China Africa Forum. He said, China is involved almost in every industry in Nigeria: education, media, or like infrastructure, but only in one area that China is not involved. It's the governance. China never involved in telling them how to run their governments, how to administrate their country, even despite they involved in every other industry. And they definitely love it. They love it because they are so sick of the lectures that Western leaders given them for like the past 100 years. Some a former Chile ambassador said every time a Chinese cabinet came to Chile, they talk about trade cooperation. But every time U.S. cabinet came to Chile, it's about China. Every time the Western leaders came here, we get free lectures. So I just wonder how many Western politicians, I mean, think from global South leaders' position to think, well, sometimes it's not sometimes it's not about whether China is, for these countries, they don't want to just choose China or choose America. They want to work with everyone to earn enough money to develop the countries, right? So
yeah.
if China offers a good deal, if any other country offers a good deal, they want to work with it. But the reason they're pivoting away from certain Western countries is because you don't bring concrete economic cooperation plans. You only give us concrete lectures. That's why we want to avoid you. That's the reality that many Western politicians don't see.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think, on this channel generally, we feel BRICS is very important because it allows cooperation, and they talk to each other. The politicians and the bureaucrats actually talk to each other. Unfortunately, in BRICS, we haven't been allowed to hear really what they're talking about, but I can imagine why it is sensitive because of exactly what you're talking about, right? The way the hegemony operates, by threatening and blackmailing, and we've seen this. We know the threats and the blackmail, and it is blackmail, and the coups, the violent coups, the political coups. So yeah, it's definitely a big difference. But let's sound a little bit more positive. The year of the snake. So a bit of a look ahead. Next year is the Chinese lunar year of the snake, a figure often seen as both wise and cunning. How does this symbolism resonate culturally in China?
Mm. Before I talk about snakes, I think there's a point I need to raise because it's very important. We are approaching the Chinese New Year. Actually, the name is not Lunar New Year. Lunar New Year comes from probably some Western cultures trying to rebrand it. But
Oh,
here we call it Chinese New Year or Spring Festival, because why it's not Lunar New Year? Because some people think it's based on lunar calendar, but no, it's not based on lunar calendar. It's based on lunisolar calendar. So calling it a lunar calendar is just not right. So here we call it. You can call it a Spring Festival or Chinese New Year or Chunjie, which is the Chinese name, but it's not Lunar New Year because it's based on lunisolar calendar.
so
Uh,
both the sun
but
and the moon?
Yes, both the sun and moon. So
Ah,
it come from the agricultural activities. The farmers know based on the sun and the moon decide when to do this some certain agricultural activities. So it's based on lunisolar calendar. But we try to really trying to get people to know this because I think just starting from past few years we realize I don't know who, but some people are really trying to remove the Chinese out of the Chinese New Year to
ah.
try to make it doesn't sound like a Chinese influenced cultural activity, even though it comes from China. It based on a Chinese calendar. All the activities or customs they celebrate comes from China, but they don't want to be called a Chinese New Year.
No
So
surprise. Thank you
yeah,
for clearing
so
that
that
up. That's
no,
excellent.
I totally
Excellent.
understandable because I noticed that in most Western countries they call it the Lunar New Year, but it's not. And some other countries who also celebrate this because this festival is being celebrated by several countries, but all because of the influence from Asian Chinese culture, like South Korea, Vietnam, Singapore, and other countries with a huge Chinese community. They all celebrate this festival, maybe some changes in their customs, in the traditions they celebrate, but everything comes from this Chinese influenced culture, like lion dance from Guangdong, China, red envelope, give people money, put on. So it's a lot of traditions, and I think just a few weeks ago, it got recognized. It got enlisted on UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage. So it's recognized as a cultural heritage to not just Chinese people, to the entire humanity. So it's officially being called as Spring Festival. I noticed the effort that like some people are trying to remove the Chinese influence out of Chinese New Year. But well, if you really want to remove the Chinese influence, how about invent your own holiday as invent your
Yes.
own activities, invent your own calendars. You cannot just get everything from China and then don't call it Chinese New Year. So like we were trying to change it. Uh, yeah. So you can call it a
No,
Spring
that's good.
Festival.
Thank you for explaining that. That's a very important point. So we don't lose the culture because a lot of what you're talking about is very cultural. And so, yeah. So the year of the snake,
Yeah.
how does that symbolism resonate in China?
I think snakes are. I think in Western culture, snakes all most of the time represent some evil stuff, right? But in
Yes.
China, right? Yeah, in China there are stories, mythical stories about evil snakes, but there are also good stories about snakes. Snakes not necessarily represents evil. Snakes also represents fortune, like a fortune, luck. So it has carries both sides. And even one of the most legendary love stories in China, a TV series that every Chinese know that we grew up watching, is about the romance between two snakes and a human, because it's about two snakes. After hundreds of years of practice, they became the semi-god, and they can transform into human form, and they fall in love with a man. So that's the romance story about snakes, how snakes became human and then became like a god. So there are so
Wow.
many mythical stories in Chinese culture. Yeah. So
That's
of
cool.
course there are best. Yeah. So I mean, many creatures, many animals have very positive meanings in Chinese culture, and some also believe snakes are the early forms of the Chinese dragon. So they call it all like a small dragon. So
Right. Oh, of
it,
course.
yeah, it has different meanings, but in general, we celebrate every year. I'm a dragon, so now it's still my year. I'm a
I'm a
dragon,
dragon too.
and ooh, cool, cool. And the this year Chinese New Year starts 2025, falls on January the 29th, I think, if I remember clearly, correctly. January the 29th. Let me check. I'm quickly checking. Okay, so by late January. So in Chinese New Year, the Year of Snake 2025 starts in late January. So I hope if anyone interested in celebrating this festival, you can watch our Spring Festival Gala. It's our biggest thing every year at the New Year's Eve. We have a gala on national television. The entire country will be watching it. We have so many traditions. Lion dance in the southern China. We put up the Chunlian, some good words in front of the doors. But I really hope people remember the correct name of our festival: Spring Festival or
Yes.
Chinese New Year.
Or Chinese
But
New
it's
Year.
not Lunar New Year.
Excellent. I'm glad you worked that out, and because that's a little bit tricky, you know. And speaking of tricky figures, let's talk about Donald Trump. I mean, we have at some point, right? It's always going to happen. He
Yeah.
recently made a bold statement. Quote: "China and the United States together can solve all the problems of the world." End quote. He even extended an invitation to President Xi Jinping for his inauguration, though reports suggest Xi may not attend. What's your take on Trump's comment about the G2 cooperation? Is it realistic? What would it take for a partnership like that to thrive?
It's good to hear. I mean, of course,
Mm,
two largest economies, two big countries, if they collaborate, of course, they can solve a lot of problems. And that's the message that Chinese President Xi Jinping has been saying for a long time. From like 2023, when Chinese President Xi Jinping visited San Francisco, met with Joe Biden, he said it the world is big enough for both of us to develop. And so I mean, there, and if we work together, there are a lot of problems we can solve: climate change or economy. And this has been said by so many strategists from China, from the U.S. Even when Trump and Biden were launching the war, trade war or technology war, chip ban with China. So I mean, he said nothing new. This is a message being said by Chinese leader, by strategists from both countries all the time. But I it's a positive sign, but I want to naively believe in what he said, because look at the cabinet he chose. All the candidates in his cabinet he chose are war hawks, anti-China hawks, like Marco Rubio, that
mm,
he nominated to be the Secretary of State. Marco Rubio basically supported, involved every coup in Latin America. He also supported every riots in China. And I mean, this Marco Rubio is such an infamous anti-China hawk and warmongers. And the other people are this like more the same. The director for CIA, trade representatives, national security advisor are all war hawks. Oh, so you don't know, but also there are other people who you don't like Elon Musk. You don't know what kind of role these people are gonna play it, but they are not in the government, right? Or Elon Musk is not in the government. So based on the cabinet he chose, I don't think his tone on China will be softened. And he's the one launched the trade war with China during his last presidency. So I want to naively believe in this. I mean, all what he's saying is, I don't know his true intentions. I don't know. And he said he invited President Xi, who sent the last minute invitation. Last invitation is basically just trying to say, I know we invited you, but you didn't come. So it's I mean, the responsibility is on you. So I don't know whether the invitation is sincere or not. But I don't think, in general, his presidency, his administration will change their strategy on China. The United States, in their 2021 Strategic Competition Act, already see China as a strategic rival. So no matter Trump or Biden, no matter like a Republican or Democrats, they basically will do the same towards China. And many U.S. strategic thinkers said, oh, like John Mearsheimer said, the U.S. doesn't accept peer competitors. Even though they said they want like a fair competition, no, they don't want to see a peer competitor. And economically, politically, militarily, China is strong enough for them to see China as a threat. So I think I'm sure Chinese leaders are ready to deal with the best and the worst.
Yeah, I'm sure they are too. They've been through a lot already. No, I definitely take your point, and I think this is an interesting part of it, because you have an administration, because the USA has a presidential system, so the president leads a lot. I'm not that familiar with USA civics, but he definitely had this issue in his last presidency. But don't you find it strange though that he's making that announcement, or do you, like you said, you sort of think he's saying something nice, but it's an invitation right at the end, like we don't really expect you to come. Because I know you're not optimistic about the USA. I definitely get that, and I totally understand.
Yeah.
But is there any? Do you think there's any hope? Because obviously they have a different political system. But are you optimistic at all?
I know there are people who are optimistic about Trump. Maybe he's good to business people after he realized there's so much businesses between China and the US they cannot afford to lose. Elon Musk, his Tesla, I think 40% of their income are based in China. They're too much at stake. So I don't know. I think economically, some business people are more leaning towards Trump because he's a businessman. He probably be more have some policies good for the U.S. business people. But strategically, systematically, I don't know, because his candidates in his cabinet will do everything to make sure China, to compete with China. So because in American political system, president alone cannot make the decision. It's the whole administration, what they think. Based on the candidate he chose now, doesn't look good. Marco Rubio?
Yeah, I agree. We have the same problem here in Australia. There's the different personalities and the history and what they do, and I don't know if they're personally like that or whether, because I know politicians, representatives, they are advised and then they make a decision based on that advice. And sometimes, depending on what bureaucrats you have, and obviously they choose their bureaucrats too. They choose who they want to work with to get their advice from. I guess this goes to so much corruption as well. But no, that's cool. We definitely want to hear what you thought about that as a bit of a gauge, right? So, but let's move on to sort of like the elephant in the room, Jing Jing. So now, as promised, it's time to address what might be the most unexpected and controversial topic of this interview: the so-called scariest weapon China is using against the West, Chinese garlic. Okay, so we're just having a bit of fun here, all right? Recently, US Senator Rick Scott claimed that garlic grown in China poses a major threat to US security and food safety. Let's watch this statement for context.
Is garlic dangerous? Well, maybe. You see, Communist China produces the majority of the world's garlic. But what Communist China doesn't tell you is exactly how they're producing it. Now, we already know that Communist China doesn't play by our rules or have Americans' best interests in mind. Communist China has a proven track record of producing unsafe goods. We can't trust its food to be safe for our families. This is especially true for garlic grown in Communist China. There are reports that shine a light on alleged disgusting practices that Communist China uses to grow garlic, then export it to the United States. Reports indicate that Chinese garlic is grown using raw sewage, possibly including human feces, and that the garlic is then bleached to make it appear whiter and cleaner to the eye after its growth in unsanitary conditions. It's also processed using slave labor. Communist China uses slave labor, and these poor people are forced to peel so much garlic that their fingernails literally fall off. So they have to use their teeth to get the job done. It's horrific. And it means that Chinese sewage garlic should be unacceptable for human consumption. Would you knowingly feed this to your kids? Of course not. And what's frightening is that the United States does not inspect and ensure the vast majority of imported Chinese sewage garlic is safe and up to our standards. And this is something we eat, cook with, feed our families and kids. We shouldn't have any doubt in our minds that when we go to the grocery store and pick up garlic, that is safe and up to our standards. We have to get to the bottom of this. When our health, safety, and well-being is at risk, we have to take this seriously. Every single time we see something labeled made in China, we need to question whether it's safe for our families. That's why I asked the Commerce Department to investigate how Chinese sewage garlic is grown, and why I will soon be introducing the Sewage Garlic Act to ban the import of garlic from Communist China to protect Americans from this gross practice. I'm also asking every single grocery store to take Chinese sewage garlic off its shelves. Every single store. Get it off the shelves. But for now, it's up to you. It's up to you to protect yourself and your family. Next time you're in the grocery store and you see made in China on garlic, ask yourself, do you want to serve that to your family?
What are your thoughts on this? Is this concern about Chinese garlic exaggerated or grounded in real issues?
Wow. I mean, if you're so afraid of China, you know what? What else you should do? Besides not eating the garlic, you also should not use the phones that made by China. You shouldn't use the coffee machines made by China. And don't open the Christmas gifts that are made in China. You probably need to take off your shirts, your pants, your underpants, your socks. All those things were made in China. I mean, if you're so scared of China, get rid of everything. I mean, how pathetic is that? Like, is that? I thought it's a comedy. I thought it's a comedy, but it's real. A senator doing this thing? Who would believe that?
Maybe for us, it is a comedy for us that know better. But for people who don't,
China is spying on you through your underpants. Okay, your underpants made in some villages in China. I also see this like stories several years ago on Fox News. They're saying China is spying on you through the coffee machines. I mean, who have the time? Why would I spy on you? Like you're a random person living in a village in somewhere, maybe in America. Why? What information you bring is so crucial for us to spend that much effort to spy on you. So I mean, this kind of anti-China hate, I don't know how to call it. This is so hilarious, but also dangerous in a way, because I'm in China. It doesn't affect me. But imagine the Chinese Americans living in the United States. How will they be discriminated against by, say, the group of people that this senator represents? If these people, I mean, keep spreading these hateful messages, eventually other people gonna believe that every other race, all these Asian-looking people, are spying on me, are taking over our jobs, are stealing our lunch. They blame their own faults on other group of people, and when economy is not doing good, when the country is going down, the best way is find someone else to blame. And now China is the scapegoat for both parties and for everything. Oh, I can't find a job because of the Chinese. We don't have factories because they put factories in China because of the Chinese stole our jobs. No, because the capitalists, the billionaires in your country want to use cheap labor in our country to maximize their interests. Even though what many of the working class whites lost jobs, their economic situation decreased for decades, but the other group of people are making loads of money. There are always people losing money, and there are always people winning, earning the most of money. And who are making the most of money? The rich people, same rich as the rich people in the United States, the capitalists who are benefiting from the globalization. So they are the ones really to blame for the wider working class decreasing economic situation. Not the Chinese people, but of course China is the scapegoat for everything. So I mean, I joked about it. I think it's fun. We laugh about it. So all of us will say, "Yeah, like we're spying on you. We're spying on you. It's so important that we spy on you through TikTok by watching teenagers dancing to crazy musics." So, but the reality is, it will have a huge impact on other Chinese Americans, Chinese overseas, because I have Chinese people, Chinese friends who lived in Australia who got thrown eggs at several times because of the racism and discrimination. But the real damage is also for those people who cannot see the real problem, the real cause. By scapegoating China, by scapegoating Chinese, you don't see who is really destroying your life. Your governments, the rich billionaires, they are the ones who are really using your tax money, sponsoring wars, benefiting from the globalization, making your life miserable. But you don't see that because they teach you to hate the Chinese, hate the black people, hate the brown people, hate other race of people. So that's dangerous.
That's a very good point. And that's the lesson. That is certainly a lesson when you see these type of things. To us in the alternative media, we laugh because we're in this all the time. But, you made a really good point. Think about that affects those people, that it's actually, who are the people that are actually doing this? I don't know if that senator actually realizes that or not, or because I know they do a lot of stagecraft in politics. And so they sort of say, oh, do this. This is good for your votes, right? Which I think the representatives need to stop doing with their PR people. Because I would say that's probably what's going on. Definitely there's the anti-China narrative, but they have these PR people that say, oh, you should do this, and this is a good thing to do, when it's not. And so, but okay, look, let's wrap up with some positive updates. And, seeing your passion for traveling, we have some great news from those eager to explore China firsthand. So starting November 30, 2024, citizens from 9 new countries, including Bulgaria, Romania, and Japan, will be able to visit China visa-free. Furthermore, the visa-free stay limit for exchange visits will extend from 15 to 30 days, benefiting travelers from 38 countries. So, Jing Jing, how do you see these changes impacting China's cultural exchange and tourism in the coming years?
It's so great. In the past 2 years, I've been meeting friends from all over the world. They come from UK, from the United States, from Africa, from Latin America. They come from everywhere. I'm sitting in Beijing, meeting all of them. So I feel like Beijing is the new United Nations headquarters, really, because I've seen so many people from different cultures and countries. It's so great because you don't need to read media to know the other people in another country. You just come here. You come here, see for yourself. We have amazing food, by the way. Chinese food, amazing. Make some local friends, talk to us to really get to know us. And I'm already seeing that because so many very influential YouTubers, content creators, they came to China to travel, made a vlog because that's what they do. They go to every country, make vlogs, and they came to China, made a vlog, and all their vlogs, they said how shocked they were because it's just so different from media told them. It's so different from what they learned about China from hearing from media. And their videos perform super well, millions of views on YouTube. So I really welcome all of you to come here to travel, to have a good time. And also, if you want to stay here for longer, maybe you can also study in China. We have universities across China, in Beijing, Shanghai, some very leading universities like Peking University, Tsinghua University, Fudan University, and we have students from all over the world applying for graduate schools, from pursuing PhDs. And you can also find a job here. There are many job opportunities, and I really encourage you to come here. Recently, I have a friend who just moved to China a few months ago. When he sent videos of another city's like bullet train, high-speed rail, and the subway, just marvelous infrastructures, send the videos back home to his family and friends back in the United States. Some of them like have their brains exploded. They just couldn't believe there's some fancy technology infrastructure exists in random cities in China. But it also shows how disproportionate the in the media is. All they think, all the image they have about China is backward village, like pathetic people living in horrible conditions. But in reality, there are so many convenient technologies. And then the thing is, I think regardless of the infrastructure technologies, I think the most important thing is the safety. The safety in China is really another level. Only in China, me as a woman, I can walk alone in the middle of the night, 12 p.m., 1 a.m., 2 a.m. I don't need to worry about things. No attacks, no harassment. I don't need a man to send me home because it's just so safe. We don't worry about it. We call a car, Uber or Didi, just go home. And I literally have friends from Latin America or North America. All the women are saying the same thing. Only in China, they feel so safe. And without worrying about their safety as a woman, they can finally concentrate on their work. I mean, they can finally, I don't worry about the safety or already be so alerted. They are so relaxed and concentrate and think about their work. And I always tell my friend, sometimes I go to an event, go to a Starbucks. I just leave my backpack, my stuff on the table, and go somewhere else to do other things. And come back an hour later, my stuff will still be there. Nobody is stealing that.
That's a very interesting, because I'm a man, so I don't think about it like that. But for women, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is it considered to be cheap to holiday in China, or is it expensive, or just sort of normal? What would you say? Because you've lived in the UK, you know what it's like. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on which cities you go. Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Guangzhou, the top tier 1 mega cities, they are relatively more expensive than the other cities. But the other cities like Chengdu, Chongqing, also very popular, both international and domestically travel cities, very affordable. Even to me as Chinese, very affordable, so cheap. But in general, China in general is much cheaper than I would say United States or Australia. So in general, it's quite cheap. But if you come to Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, it will be more expensive. But in general, it's very affordable.
Okay, so
especially on the necessities of food. You can have fancy stuff, but you can also have the very cheap, down-to-earth stuff. So like, no matter how much money you have, you can always find the things that suits you. Here's the thing in China. If you live in China, you will notice the living cost, like water, electricity, heating, very cheap compared to any developed countries, I would say. This thing, heating so, I mean, in winter, in northern China, it's very cold. Heating in China is so cheap. Electricity is so cheap. Water is so cheap. And these are the most fundamental necessities for living. So even people come from relatively poor conditions, they still can have a decent life. We have some cities, the rent is crazy, but you can also find affordable rent houses. Here, food, they are expensive, fancy, luxurious restaurant, But if you go to any restaurant on the streets, very affordable. 10 kwai, 20 kwai, you can eat a fancy meal with meat and food and noodles and everything. 20 kwai is like how much? $2? $2 to $3?
Wow.
So
very cheap. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
That's interesting. See, if it wasn't for people like you, Jing Jing, who tell this story, the real story, we wouldn't know. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for shedding the light on these diverse topics and sharing your unique perspective. To our audience, please visit Jing Jing's YouTube channel and tell her what you think and make a comment below. If you're interested in more, follow Jing Jing on her on a Substack, and that will all be in the description. So stay tuned for our next episode, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep these conversations going. See you soon.
See you soon.